we're interrupting the program because we're going to go across to Brussels, where a day after granting Ukraine a candidacy to join the EU, the bloc's leaders are in Brussels as the bloc it grapples with surging inflation, energy shocks, and growing budget pressures.
We will have a possible first meeting in Prague under the Czech presidency, and we will prepare together with the French president and the Czech rotating presidency this possible meeting after the summer. Today we had the Euro Summit and we had the occasion to focus on two key points. First, the current economic situation. Inflation is a major concern for all of us. Russia's war of aggression is pushing up the price of energy, foods and commodities, and all of this has a direct impact on our citizens and businesses. We are united and we agreed to closely coordinate our economic policy responses. And second topic, our European financial architecture. We remain committed to completing the banking union, and further steps will follow, and the deepening of the capital markets union remains a priority. Nous avons également eu l'occasion d'aborder une fois encore
the opportunity to tackle a number of projects that should be carried out on energy, and we firmly intend to keep up our efforts, to coordinate our efforts in this very critical field, and we have to take on board the work that was made by the Commission. And then we have two final points we'd like to bring up. One step ahead, significant step by Croatia to join the Eurozone. It is a critical step that was supported by the European Council. And there will be some implementation in the next few weeks and months, and we warmly welcome the Croatian authorities and people for that decision that shows the strength and the resilience of the Eurozone. And then another point on Greece. We had the opportunity to greet the step ahead made by Greece in terms of strengthening the surveillance program. Donc je peux m'arrêter.
D'une part, une fois encore, dire nos remerciements pour la présidence française de l'Union européenne. On a eu l'occasion, en fin de Conseil européen, de saluer tous ensemble avec les 27 leaders le travail gigantesque qui a été réalisé en termes législatifs, mais également en termes politiques dans les différentes dimensions. Et les efforts vont se poursuivre puisque dans les quelques prochains jours encore, particulièrement sur la question des Balkans occidentaux.
Work on the Western Balkans and Northern Macedonia, because of the vote that took place within the Bulgarian parliament a few hours ago. We're going to be very active to try and make some headway on this. Once again, thanks to the President and the teams that were mobilized to keep up working and making progress on this European project. Thank you very much. I'd like to give a more particular personal project to Pinot et Pinot. You might be surprised when I say this, but Pinot et Pinot, you are institutions for the press room. You are known all over the world.
Et je souhaitais vous remercier du fond du cœur.
Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I see that the wide wave of applause shows that you are loved by everyone. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Madam President.
Yes, thank you so much. Indeed, today we had the opportunity to hold an in-depth discussion on the economy during the Euro Summit. The euro area is forecast to continue growing both in 22 and 23, although by less than we anticipated before the war. Obviously, the war in Ukraine is having a heavy impact both on growth and on inflation. We've seen Russia's disruptive action on gas, and we're seeing price increases beyond energy on food and elsewhere in the economy. Therefore, we discussed how to mitigate the economic and social impacts, especially on the most vulnerable of our societies. This starts with being adequately prepared to deal with potential further disruptions in deliveries of Russian gas to Europe, and we are working hard on this. We have reviewed all the national emergency plans to help make sure everyone is ready for further disruptions, and we are working on a common European emergency demand reduction plan with industry, but also with the 27 member states. We do this because we've learned our lesson from COVID-19. There we have seen that when we act together as 27, when we avoid fragmentation, we are strong and we have an enormous impact. I will present this plan in July to the leaders. There will not be a return to cheap fossil fuels, I think, and therefore, alongside temporary and targeted support to vulnerable families and businesses, it is essential to help our economies and societies to adapt to the new conditions. The root cause of our problem is our dependence on fossil fuel, which we must get rid of. And this is basically the essence of Repower EU. We are providing through Repower EU resources of round about €300 billion to do three things. On one hand, to diversify our energy supply. Second pillar is to increase the energy efficiency. And the third pillar is the supply of our own green renewable energy. And we are already seeing results. If I may give you an example for the first pillar, the diversification away from Russian gas, we see that the US LNG deliveries to the European Union are up by 75% this year compared to last year. We've just done an MOU with Israel, Egypt, and the European Union to make sure that there's natural gas from Israel liquefied in Egypt and then brought via LNG to the European Union. The Norwegian pipeline gas is up 15%, Azerbaijan up by plus 90%. So there's a lot on the move, really to diversify away from the Russian gas to other trustworthy suppliers. Looking at the renewables, I think there's one interesting figure. The European Union was and is the second largest market globally in terms of increased capacity of renewables in 21 and will be in 22. So you also see the big move forward of heavy investment in renewables. That is the energy of the future. That's the way to go. A second topic that we have been discussing is in parallel that we are working on the review of the economic governance. We know that debts and deficits have soared in all member states after COVID. And at the same time, investment needs are very large for a successful transition to green, digital and resilient EU society and economy. And therefore, we need to design rules that, in a way, reconcile these higher investment needs, they are necessary, and at the same time to safeguard sound fiscal finances. The one goes with the other, that is fiscal sustainability and growth. And let me also end, dear Emmanuel, by congratulating you to an extremely successful French presidency. It was colossal, the work you've done. I've witnessed this every day, how intensive your team, and I really want to thank you and your team, has been working on progress in the European Union. It really made a difference. I mean, we should keep in mind that when you started, there was a lot on your plate, but you had no clue that there was a war coming. In record time, we delivered together 6 packages of heavy sanctions. And I think it was a hallmark and a very defining moment to see the determination of the European Union and the speed at which we can move forward. We have in this time welcomed 7.5 million refugees from Ukraine. 3 million are still here. And you and your team as presidency made it possible that we very quickly granted temporary protection. That is access to the labor market, to the education system, to the social security system. All this thanks to the French presidency. I thank you personally for the enormous progress that we have made in the European Green Deal, and here specifically the huge package of Fit for 55. Dozens of proposals have now been pushed forward, and this is a real step forward. The same goes, and I know this is very close to your heart, the DSA and the DMA, so the getting an order into the online world as well as we have it in the offline world to protect our citizens and to keep up the competitiveness of our businesses in the online world. This has been the DSA and DMA adopted in record time, really delivered. There was the conference on the future of Europe, but I'm personally very proud on one specific file that you have concluded in the French presidency, and this is women on board. It took 10 long years. It was stuck for 10 years. And the French presidency made it possible that it reappeared and was negotiated and adopted in record time. So not only did you finish an injustice for women, but also an enormous loss of earnings for companies. It's a real big step forward that we have now this agreement on women on board. Last but not least, and I want to not miss to mention it, we have made good progress on the Pact on Migration and Asylum, especially on the voluntary solidarity mechanism and on the governance of Schengen. Important files were difficult to manage. You really pushed it forward. And I stop here, but as you can see, dear Emmanuel, I think France can be very proud of this presidency. It was outstanding, and many thanks for that.
Merci beaucoup. Merci, Madame la Présidente. Monsieur le Président, vous avez la parole.
Merci beaucoup. Merci, Monsieur le Président, Madame
Thank
la Présidente.
you, Madam President, Mr. President. Many things were said. I will not repeat the discussions we had this morning. The conclusions are very clear, and the President of the Council, the President of the Commission clearly showed what the nature of the discussions were. We were trying to have a clear answer on the energy issue, and also clearly the issue we are living through, the quick return of inflation, normalizing monetary policy on both sides of the ocean, and we can see the first signs of an economic slowdown. And the upshot is we have to take quick decisions on several issues, including energy, and to keep on implementing the major projects to make our union stronger, more solidary in a budgetary and economic fashion. I'd like to speak on the outlines of what President Michel said earlier on the political European community. Yesterday's discussion last night, after the press conference we had, made it possible to shed light and to build a wide consensus on that issue. This is not a substitute to enlargement under no circumstance, but we all understood that we need to have a political European framework to treat this sort of strategic issue. We saw that the enlargement, because of its pace, because of the requirements, does not cover the whole ground of relations between Europeans. And so this European political community will make it possible on a European scale, in a very open manner, from Iceland to Ukraine, to bring together partners who on defense, energy, infrastructure, security, health crisis, economic issues, can discuss all these. We'll have to prepare all this. And the first meeting will take place in the Czech Republic, under the Czech presidency, with all our partners, and we want to be equal partners and to gradually structure this approach because of the clear interest of all. I would like to say a few words about what was said yesterday, but because of this morning developments, let's talk about the accession negotiations of Northern Macedonia and Albania. I am glad of the Bulgarian Parliament vote because it opens up the negotiations with Northern Macedonia, and also it brings forward the discussions on Albania. We will keep this up in the following hours. We'll exchange with our partners in Bulgaria and Macedonia, and in the next few days we can have an agreement, and then the system will fully implement what can be decided. So it's a strong, positive signal. I'd like to thank the Bulgarian Prime Minister, but also the political parties in power and in the opposition who came together on this vote. I'd like to thank them for this headway. There's still work to be done, but it's a major achievement. I'd like to thank Madam President von der Leyen on what she said regarding this 6 month. And all those achievements would not have been possible without the cooperation of President Michel and his teams, and Mrs. President and the Commission and their services, and the European Parliament. I'd like to thank them because they worked so hard. Those are united institutions, and during that 6 months, they acted. We have to recognize, we have to be humble that and recognize that in 2022, at this stage, Europe is very different from what it was 5 months ago. We did not anticipate how changed it would be. First and foremost, because Russia decided to invade Ukraine and launch a war, but also because we were united and we implemented a number of structuring decisions for Europe. Sanctions very quickly. 2 days for the first wave of sanctions. And then sanctions decided by the last Council meeting that we could not contemplate 6 months ago. Not even ourselves could contemplate we are going to sanction 90% of Russian oil. But that's what we did. A strong macroeconomic support to Ukraine. In terms of its defense, I'd like to greet the decisions that were made. We activated the payment European system, and we showed that we could help a system to equip that country fighting for our values. And then also a macroeconomic and financial support on top of welcoming, hosting refugees, integrating them in the work market, and a number of issues, a number of countries, such as Poland, that were in front of this all. Now, in parallel, we completed this by decisions we made last night, and a strong political signal that was sent to Ukraine, Moldavia, and Georgia. Also, we moved our agenda forward. That agenda was very consistent with that political change. We didn't know about the war. We had to make decisions, huge decisions, to face up to that war, but it only strengthened and validated the belief that was at the core of our work, that we need more European sovereignty. 2 or 3 years ago, it was seen as a crazy French idea, but then opinions came together, and we all see the importance of defense, energy, and all sovereignties in Europe. This war accelerated our collective agenda. So we moved forward a number of issues over the last few months. Within the Council, we acted the setting up of the fighting against climate change, a border carbon tax on borders, action against deforestation, and then a number of measures to cut our emissions by 50% at 2030. On many of those issues, I'd like to thank all the institutions for the huge work they achieved. We're very close to supplementing all this, and we'll keep this up for the next few days. As regards social and labor Europe, we rose up to our commitments, raising minimum wages, so that European workers can fight downward social dumping. For instance, interim work. We'd like to thank the Portuguese presidency that played a major role during the social summit, and we dispelled all misunderstandings to be able to complete that text. And I'm very satisfied to be able to say that finally we completed those achievements in terms of gender parity in a company board of directors. This text had been blocked for the last 10 years. So thanks to new coalitions, we made some headway on this as well. On digital giants regulation, together we built strong achievements with 2 European laws, services markets. There we can regulate players, prevent super concentrations, and then we'll regulate contents. This is new. We are the first entity to do this. We've set up a general regulations to control private data. This is not the end of our work. We still have a lot of work to do. We should remain humble. There's still a lot to do if we want to complete this process. But at least we started imposing digital giants the respect of competition and the fight against terrorism. Many other achievements with Schengen, a lot of achievements on the European policy on immigration and asylum. And this is a gradual policy. It is very ambitious. I strongly support the Commission, and we made a lot of headway because we decided on this gradual policy, gradual approach, so that we can better protect, better filter entries into the community, preserve the freedom of circulation. And then on defense, for the first time, we set up a strategic roadmap for the next 10 years. And we made a commitment during the Versailles summit to strengthen our capacities and investments on defense. This supplements the work done under the German presidency. During the Madrid summit, we supplemented what was done. On energy, in Versailles, we accelerated the reduction of our dependency on fossil fuels and to diversify fuel sources. And we're going to make common purchases in terms of economic independence. We will fight against the strategies of some great powers. We want to have a more responsible capitalism. Now, beyond neighborhood issues, we achieved some advances. There's a partnership with Africa that was more structured over the last 6 years, and we just had a summit with the Union, the African Union, with all of our partners in February, and we built a new methodology, and also we made some achievements that were confirmed over time. Food security, cooperation, protein strategy, and many other issues on financing. Finally, Europe has to listen to its citizens. The Conference on the Future of Europe started in 2019. 1 year ago, was started officially, and it handed its report on the 9th of May, and we now have to implement those changes. You know that France supports a stronger and more protective Europe. We had the first exchanges, and we'll keep this up. This is, in a few words, what I wanted to tell you. During these 6 months, we acted quickly and strongly, fighting this war back in Europe, and at the same time, we promoted our agenda, we strengthened it, because it showed it was consistent with the current geopolitical context. I'd like to finish with one word. I'd like to thank all of the institutions, but also the French teams in Brussels, as well as in Paris, for their excellent work. You thanked me, but it's actually, I'm just the head of the team, and a lot of work was made by the ministers and their teams. The permanent representation in Brussels, but also the teams in Élysée, Matignon, and the other offices in Paris. So I'd like to once again to thank the French teams for their commitment and their work. In a few days, we're going to pass the baton. We'll still be very busy, and we'll pass the baton to the Czech presidency. I'd like to wish a lot of courage to Prime Minister Tekosciala and the Czech Republic. After the Madrid summit, I will officially pass the baton. We were very proud and very happy to be by your side and move ahead on all those issues and to build up a stronger Europe. So thanks again for being able to work by your side. Thank you, Chair.